face needs a wipe down. Oh. Welcome to Cooking at Home. I'm Dave, that's Audie. Today we've done this a couple of times, or things like this, shown sort of ways to break down onions. This is the official guide to every way you ever need to break down an onion.
Yeah.
And how to do it properly.
So what are you going to show us today?
So we're going to do all the different shapes and sizes of dice.
Okay.
And then we're going to French slice.
Yeah.
And rings. Sort of. I got this little fucked up onion, so it's sort of rings.
Right.
Alright, so for all of our dices and French slices, we're going to nip the top end off of the onion. No need to peel the paper yet. Leave the root on. This helps hold everything together. Makes things way easier on the next few steps. Cut it through straight down like that. And we peel off the paper. Sometimes, in order to be able to cut properly, you need to remove a little extra off the front. In this case I do. I need a little bit of surface area here to get started. So we just have our half onion, the root's still on, and we need to leave that on to help us out while we mess about here. This method that I'm going to show you is absolutely the best.
Yeah, it is.
If you really want me to, I have a half an onion and I can show you why. Do you want me to do that?
It's not a terrible reason why. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it does make sense. So the most traditional way you would do this is we're going to have to score this onion this way, and we're going to have to score this onion that way, and then we're going to have to cut it this way. The traditional method says do it this way first. And then go this way. But then watch what happens.
Yeah, that is exactly why you
see
don't
that?
do that.
It all just sort of ruffles apart. You can't really control it. Even if I squeeze it back together, none of those cuts were made properly. I get close to having a decent sort of product, but it's really, that can be done better. And I'm going to show you the better way to do it. And you're welcome. All we're going to do differently is instead of going this way first, we're going to go this way first.
Yeah.
And then it's much easier to control everything, keep everything together. Now, when you do this, you are cutting towards yourself. And most people's inclination is to hold the onion back here, and then your fingers are in front of the blade, and you will have an accident.
Right.
Keep your fingers up high on the onion, and you'll see me using a flat palm like that. And that's just so my fingers are completely out of the way of the blade of the knife. So we're doing brunoise. That's about, oh, do you even remember the measurement? 1/8 by 1/8 by 1/8?
It's 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch cubed.
Or just 1/8 of an inch cubed.
Or 1/8 of an inch cubed, yes.
Oh, that cut was a little big. I'm gonna go back and get in between there. So I'm making cuts horizontally up the onion, but I'm not cutting all the way out the back side.
Right.
If you see, I'll kind of lift up this flap here. I've left it attached there.
Right.
Intentionally. Same with all those cuts. Then we go back this way, cutting the same thickness across here, just like this. Now, did you see how when I was doing all that, it wasn't ruffling all apart?
Right.
Everything holds together nice and easy. Like there's two little tiny pieces that came off there, but they're the right shape and size that we're looking for.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Now it's easy. We got all the hard work done. We just go the same thickness right back down to the root of the onion there. And we have nice brunoised onions. We don't have to go back and do all this kind of stuff for 10 minutes trying to get everything done. Everything is the same shape and size. It's going to cook evenly. It's that easy. Now the next size we're going to do, small dice, is basically twice the size of this one here. So we just increase the thickness of our score marks by a factor of 200%. So I'm going to do twice the distance there, twice the distance there, more or less.
Okay.
And that's pretty easy to do. We've already done the little one. That's a little bit more difficult. Everything's same shape and size, nice and uniform. Not exactly, but pretty close to twice the size there.
Yeah.
Good enough for the girls I go out with. Next one, even easier, gonna be twice the size of that. So we just increase everything twice the size. Let's say right about there.
You say this is like a medium dice.
This is medium dice, yes. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Everything in a little chunk there. Same size, nice and uniform.
Yeah.
Pretty close, twice the size of that one there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Now we're gonna do large dice, which is just twice the size of medium dice.
Yeah.
So I'll make nice big scores here. One more right there. Okay. That right there is what I was talking about. If my fingers were back here and that onion slipped off the board like that, I'm cutting my thumb and my index finger.
Right.
But since my fingers were up here, guess what happened? I just moved my hand out of the way. We're good. Everybody's safe. That is why we hold the onion properly. So when it gets kind of tight like that, just saw your knife a little bit. That's how you use a knife anyways, and you're good to go. Nice big thick scores here. Nice big thick cuts there. That's our large dice onion.
Yeah.
That's our brunoise.
Yeah.
That's about as small as you're gonna go unless you do a mince. If you want to mince, just do that and then run your knife through it a couple of times. Medium dice, twice the size of that one.
That's a small dice.
Or small dice, twice the size of the brunoise. Medium dice, twice the size of the small dice. And then large dice, twice the size of the medium dice. That's all the different dices you can do on an onion.
Learning how to dice a onion properly is a skill set that everybody should know.
Yes, I mean, in Western cooking, you put onions in almost everything that you make.
Absolutely.
And especially the way you and I cook, it's a fundamental of the foundations of the flavors that we work with in almost everything.
You pull out onions before you even know what you're cooking that evening.
You literally start chopping onions before you know what dish you're going to make because you know there are onions going into it. Which is why practice makes you efficient. It's good to learn how to do an onion properly.
Absolutely.
I've just shown you how to do it safely and the best way to do it. All you gotta do now is practice.
Absolutely. All right, go ahead and start preaching to them.
Okay. There's a way to cut an onion that is necessary for some dishes, but not all. But I really think is the best way to do an onion, to break down an onion. Mainly for the reason that it's by far the fastest way to break down an onion. And depending on how thick or thin you slice it, you can basically use it in place of any of these.
Yeah.
If you're using large dice for a recipe, just cut your slices thicker. If you're using brunoise for a recipe, you just do a real French slice and shave those slices off.
Yeah.
But this method is never going to be diced. It's always going to be sliced, so your onions are going to be kind of long. I'm cool with that in almost everything, in soups and stews, and stocks, sauces. So we start with the same half onion, root still on. In this case, we're going to remove the root, and there's a certain way it needs to be done. You need to cut it at an angle towards the other side of the onion and take a wedge out. It doesn't have to be that big. That was a little big. But when you are cutting, you need this space down here underneath the onion. Reason being, if you're using a chef's knife, as I am, the blade of the knife curves away from the board towards the tip. And so if you're not making really exaggerated slicing motions, you may not complete a cut, and you're going to get onion slices stacking up on each other that are all stuck together.
Right.
Having this space back here makes it much easier to go fast and not be so exaggerated in your motion and still get clean cuts. There is one more trick to this technique, and it's pretty easy. So you need to start your cuts at an angle towards the inside of the onion. So I really start sort of that way, and then as I work around, I just turn my knife vertical and finish off like that. And the reason I do that is because if you started your knife just vertical, your first cuts are going to be thick and ugly. That is not the shape and size of what we're doing here, and I'll show you in a second when we're done. So you start your knife at an angle this way towards the inside of the onion. So those are thin slices. That's a proper French slice. And you see what I'm talking about here, you know, these kind of little thin strips. That is not the same as that, but all these generally are the same. Little thin strips. That's a French slice. Now you can do that all different thicknesses. I could do it that thick if I wanted to. If I was making fajitas or something, I was just chunky pieces are fine. But a proper French slice means it's as thin as possible. It doesn't have to be super thin like shavings, but as thin as possible. Right. So at a certain point, when you get through the onion here, you get further towards the other side, and eventually this surface has more surface area than that surface that it was sitting on. So it was sitting like that, but it's not very stable anymore. So I just roll it over on the surface that's bigger. It's much more stable. Right. And then I start at an angle again. Work my way back here. Now when you get to this last little part, it gets pretty wobbly. Obviously that's hard to hold on to and take another cut out of. It's not worth chopping the tip of your thumb off.
No, it is not.
No, so you just pull that off. That's our French slices. That's beautiful.
Yeah, that is nice.
Looks like a giant shallot.
Yeah, that's right.
So normally I would leave the paper on and not worry about peeling it off and then just cut my rings and then pull the paper off of the rings. This onion came like that and I had to break it apart, pull the paper off. But rings is easy. You just leave the onion whole and then you cut slices out of it. Could be little thin slices like this, you know. Could be, you know, a little thicker. It could be really thick slices. It doesn't matter. That's rings. And then you would just go and, you know, separate them all for whatever you wanted to do. That's my least favorite way to do onions.
Yeah, for sure. Quickly describe when you use red onions and when you use white or yellow onions.
It's a great question, Ani. It's a great question. Really, I think it's more about personal preference.
Probably,
I can tell you how I feel about it. I think you agree pretty much 100%.
You're right, yeah.
If the onion is going to be eaten raw, pico de gallo, salsa, a sandwich, things like that, I prefer the red onions. Any onions you're going to cook, I generally use, my favorite's the big Texas sweet onions, the big juicy boys like this.
Yeah.
If I can't get those, I get yellow onions. If I can't get those, I get white onions. You can cook red onions. I find that cooked though, the other varieties have way more flavor.
Yeah, great.
And then there's all kinds of, you know, leeks and ramps and scallions and...
That's another video right there.
That's
a whole video
shallots and
just
all,
of like the cousins of onion.
Yeah.
Oh man, sign me up.
We're cooking at home. I'm Dave. That's Audie. This is every way you can break down an onion, and we've showed you how to do it safely and properly, and I've shown you my favorite. Thank you for joining us.